Welcome everybody. So today's unit is on hydration. We just finished the unit on heat-related illness. And so this is the beginning of the unit on hydration. So the question that I'm going to start off with today is, can a heat-related illness be prevented? Can it be prevented? And if so, how? So to answer that question, we'll say yes, it absolutely can be prevented. It can be prevented by proper hydration, and it also can be prevented by proper nutrition. And then there's also some other factors that can help prevent that. And obviously that is through proper protocols that are followed by the coaching staff and any sports medicine training staff that is on site. So we can mitigate the progression of a heat-related illness and stopping it in its tracks before it gets any worse in many situations, if we can recognize the warning signs and the red flags that occur with a heat-related illness. So the other way we can, the previous two instances I mentioned were the nutrition and hydration. So hydration, as long as we are making sure that we are hydrating properly prior to the competitive match, which means 24 hours prior, and then the same day, the hours prior to the start of that match, and we are properly eating the right foods and the proper foods prior to the 24 hours prior to the match, and even the hours leading up to the match. So yes, these types of situations where we're dealing with the heat-related illness, they can be prevented. Those stages can be prevented by proper hydration, proper nutrition, and then making sure that we are keeping all athletes in a competitively safe environment. So let's talk a little bit about dehydration. So there are many illnesses. Before I get into dehydration, there are many illnesses that actually kind of are preventable, very similar to a heat-related illness. So many situations like diabetes and heart disease and stroke and heart attacks, a lot of times these illnesses can be prevented by proper nutrition, proper weight, lack of or preventing an individual from becoming more overweight, or you as an individual eating the right foods and having the right fitness activities to decrease the tendency of becoming overweight. And then obviously eating the right foods as well, and taking in the right amount of exercise per day and per week. And then doing other things you can to ensure that the cholesterol levels are down, as well as blood pressure. So heat-related illness is preventable in many instances, just like other illnesses and diseases are. So the question is, how much water intake, how much fluid intake should occur prior to a match, prior to a competitive match? So we'll speak first about what a non-athlete, what somebody should be drinking in a 24-hour period. How much water intake, how much fluid intake is recommended for a non-athlete, for someone who is just doing their normal activities of daily living throughout the day and not participating in activities and athletic activities? How much water intake should they be taking in a 24-hour period? So the suggested amount is 64 ounces. Okay, so it's 64 ounces. Now it does have to do with body weight a little bit, but we're just going to say for general purposes, not getting into specifics, for the purpose of this class and this lecture, this seminar, we're going to say that we're going to talk about just a general individual. General hydration requirements, 64 ounces in a 24-hour period. Now, 64 ounces is very similar. This is 33.8. So if we took two of these, this would be considered about 68 ounces. we take a 32-ounce bottle. We'll just say, for example, this is a 32-ounce bottle. This is actually equivalent to one hydro flask. One hydro flask, a 32-ounce hydro flask, or a 32-ounce bottled water is equivalent to 1 liter. So if we calculate the ounces to liters, we say 2 of these, so a 64 ounces of water, or 2 of these, or 2 hydro flasks, or 2 liters is the recommended amount of fluid intake that a non-athlete should be consuming throughout the day in order to properly hydrate themselves. Now, let's talk about an athlete who is preparing for a competition. So an athlete who is preparing for a competition, right, must take in, again, 16 ounces approximately 2 hours prior to their event. So 16 ounces approximately 2 hours prior to their event. And then another 16 ounces approximately 15 minutes prior to their event. So we're looking at, again, that's 32 ounces, 2 hours prior to up to their event. So another 32 ounces. So we have a 16-ounce bottle here, right? So we take one 16-ounce bottle a couple hours prior to the event, you drink that, and then another 16 ounces approximately 15 minutes prior to their event. So that's 32 ounces, which is equivalent to a 32-ounce bottle of water, which again is equivalent to 1 additional hydro flask, if we're speaking with what individuals really recognize as water bottles or water intake, an additional hydro flask or an additional liter or additional 32 ounces up to the beginning of their event. So for an athlete, and we're not speaking about hot weather, we're not speaking about whether it's a football player in heavy clothing equipment, because that will obviously add more requirement to their hydration needs. But we're saying just not taking weather into consideration, not taking pads and equipment and things of that nature into the equation, to the situation. We're just saying in general, for an athlete, 32 ounces just prior to the event, and then before that event in a 24-hour period, an additional 64 ounces. So we're looking at 3 full liters, 24 hours prior to their event, up to their event, that an athlete should be consuming in terms of hydration. So that's, again, 3 hydro flasks or 3 liters again, 32, 64, 64 and 32 is another, 96. So almost 100 ounces of fluid, okay, leading up to their event. Now, what if we were to ask in terms of we just said prior to the event, what about the amount of fluid during the event? Okay, what about the amount of fluid that is needed during the event? Well, data indicates and research indicates that an athlete, if they have properly hydrated prior to their event and also eaten the appropriate amount of had nutritional, eaten the right foods, basically 24 hours prior to the event, and we'll talk about the foods in another segment, that they actually shouldn't need any fluid replacement for the first 60 minutes. And this actually coincides with actually an athlete who is an endurance athlete who doesn't have any breaks from 0 to 60 minutes of their competitive event. So that would mean a runner, right? A marathon runner, a triathlete. They shouldn't actually need to, for the first 60 minutes, any fluid replacement in order to replenish losses, because the amount of fluid and amount of electrolytes that they've taken in 24 hours prior to their event should be enough to get them through the event the first 60 minutes without having subsequent extensive fluid loss where they would end up being deficient and not being able to perform at high levels. So the first 60 minutes, there really shouldn't be any need for fluid replacement. Now, once 60 minutes hits, there will be need for fluid replacement every 15 minutes. Okay, so every 15 minutes, the athlete should have to recommended that they should replace fluids every 15 minutes. It's every 15 minutes, it's about 8 ounces, all right, minimum 8 ounces as they're competing through their event. So now the question is, after every 15 minutes, what should that replacement look like? Okay, after the 60 minutes. Now let's talk a second about that. So the fluid replacement when the body is in need, should equate to not just water, but it should equate to an electrolyte beverage. Okay, so the water doesn't replace the electrolytes that are lost, okay, the first 60 minutes. The water doesn't replace those electrolytes, okay? So we need to be able to maintain the amount of electrolytes. We need to be able to maintain that happy pH balance of electrolytes and water. So the next 15 minutes, so at 60 minutes, we should start replacing fluids. So 0 to 60, no replacement of fluids. At 60 minutes, replacement of fluids at minimum 8 ounces. So it can be 8 to 16 ounces, but if you're a marathon runner, it's a good chance, potentially, or a half marathon or whatever, it's a good chance that you're not going to be consuming at 60 minutes a full 16-ounce bottle of water. It might be, you may be thirsty, you may want to, but even 8 ounces is enough, okay, at the 60-minute mark. And then another 8 ounces at the 15-minute mark, so 75 minutes. But it shouldn't necessarily be water. It should be an electrolyte beverage. Now, the question is, should it be Gatorade or some other electrolyte beverage like a Body Armor or a Powerade or a vitamin water, right? Or a Propel? What should it be, right? So the answer to that question is it should be neither. And so students in the past will be like, what do you mean neither? So here's what it should look like. It should look like, so it should have water, it should have some salt, okay, and it should have some fruit juice, right? So the suggestion is that to do the best you can to create your own, right? To create your own electrolyte beverage, because the problem is that the Body Armor and the Powerade and the Gatorade and the vitamin water, it doesn't actually have a whole lot of electrolytes involved or incorporated in their ingredients. In order to replenish the amount of electrolytes lost, we'll say, so for this topic, we'll stay on salt loss during a competitive event. So Gatorade, for example, has, for one serving, which is 12 ounces, okay, so this is not 12 ounces, this is much more than 12 ounces. Let's just say for this whole bottle, you're not going to consume this. This is 32 ounces. So this is equivalent to this, right? It's equivalent to a full liter, right? So nobody, no athlete is going to consume an entire bottle of Gatorade at the 60-minute mark. And we don't even suggest that because gastric emptying is not going to be as fast anyways. It's just going to make you feel full and make the stomach slushy, and it's not going to be good for you. So we say, okay, this at 12 ounces, which is actually less than a 16-ounce bottle. So it's about 12 ounces is a little bit more than the 8 ounces that I suggested to start taking at 60 minutes. So let's just say for 12 ounces, we'll just say, we'd say, yeah, 12 ounces, you can take 12 ounces. 12 ounces is one serving, and it is 160 milligrams. Okay, it's 160 milligrams of sodium. If we look here, right, it's 160 milligrams of sodium, which is only 7% of your recommended daily value. And so 7%, you're going to lose much more than 7% of salt, right, in a competitive event that lasts longer than an hour. So we say, well, it makes no sense to take Gatorade at 7% of your replenishment. It would be much more advantageous for you to create your own electrolyte beverage. My suggestion is create your own electrolyte beverage, put enough salt in there to where it's going to give you more replenishment than a 7%. We'll talk more later about how many grams or milligrams of salt you would need to plug into your own electrolyte beverage to allow you to provide yourself with enough replenishment in terms of a source that's going to give you enough replenishment. So the thing is the water versus the salt. Okay, the water with the salt, obviously you put salt in the water, it's not going to be very palatable, right? It's not going to taste good. So we add the fruit juice in. So like a fruit punch, some type of, something that you can tolerate. So you create your own. So you go salt, some water, and then a fruit juice, and then mix it together. And then you create your own, and you can test it, right, with the taste. Okay, well, that tastes too salty. Let me put some more fruit juice in. We're going to do that actually in the next class. We're going to create our own electrolyte beverage. I'll create a video for you on that. You don't have to do it in class per se, but we'll give you some time to do that. And you can create your own and see how you feel about what it tastes like. And we'll give you the correct amount of salt to plug in to be able to replace the electrolytes that are lost. Okay, so the reality of it is that the sports drinks don't provide you enough sodium in order to replace the electrolytes lost. Okay, we'd hope that you eat the right foods in order to be able to have enough sodium in your system to be able to maintain the electrolytes that are needed to get you through an entire race or an entire event. And so with that being said, if you did, let's just say you did have the right amounts of food, we would just need you to be able to take a certain amount of salt and some fruit juice and some water and mix it and it creates your own. Now, here's the thing. Competitive sports, high school, college, whatever, athletes are not going out there and creating their own electrolyte beverage, right? They're just relying on the products that are put out there in the marketplace for fluid replacement. So that's where we have, the Body Armor here, the Gatorade, the Powerade, the vitamin water that allows us to be able to have the fluids, palatable, tasty, slightly sugary fluids that taste good, that allows us to be able to drink it for fluid replacement, right? So the question now would be, is it water or is it Gatorade, or is it water or is it a sports drink that we should drink, during the first 60 minutes or even after? So let's just stick with after. Let's just say you don't have an ability to have an electrolyte based solution that you've created on your own. So the question would be, is it water or well, we would say we would definitely suggest from a nutritional hydration standpoint that you would have some type of electrolyte based beverage to be able to drink 60 minutes or after your competitive event. Okay, so water is great before, and then the sports drinks and electrolyte based beverage would be better 60 minutes or later. Now, let's just say an individual needs fluids during the first 60 minutes. It's not suggesting that you don't drink during the first 60 minutes. It's just saying that I'm saying is that the body shouldn't require fluids for the first 60 minutes in a normal temperature based environment during a competitive match if you have hydrated prior and you've eaten the right foods. But what the thing is, we can't guarantee that somebody has hydrated properly and has eaten the right foods. So we always suggest that during the first 60 minutes, that if you are thirsty and you feel the need to drink, that we don't say, oh, you shouldn't need that. Go ahead and drink. So what we would say, well, what would we suggest? Well, you can drink water during the first 60 minutes, or you can drink a sports drink, right? The sports drink is going to give you a little bit of electrolyte replacement, but it's not going to give you what you need, right? And the water is going to give you basically no electrolyte replacement. So usually what I suggest is, either water or some type of, I don't say Gatorade, right, or a Body Armor during the first 60 minutes. Sometimes it's too sweet, right? And we don't tolerate that sugar right away. So the water is always best, and most of the time is best, unless you have some preference to have a electrolyte-based beverage during the first 60 minutes. If you do have electrolyte-based beverage and you actually do like the taste of it, my suggestion would be to water it down a bit, right? So it doesn't taste so sweet. It allows you to be able to tolerate the taste a little bit, but at least still gives you maybe a little bit extra electrolytes that you may be needing. But the first 60 minutes, we usually say, if you're going to drink something, go ahead and drink the water. If you do have a sports drink available and you like drinking sports drinks, it's okay for you to drink that. But I would say maybe water it down a little bit during the first 60 minutes. So we say water first 60 minutes, ideal, recommended. Post 60 minutes, we'd say then you need to make sure that you are replenishing your electrolyte stores that you're losing. Okay, so that's pre-competition, during competition, and then post-competition. The reality of it is that we are going to, obviously the next couple of sessions here in the segments, we're going to create our own electrolyte-based beverage. We're going to just play with it a little bit, right? Have some fun with it, see what it tastes like, see what we can tolerate. And then you can potentially even create your own if you're an athlete and have it during events and whatnot. And you may not even rely on the other types of beverages like Gatorade and Body Armor and so forth that you know the consumers or the market puts out there for the consumers. So with regards to that, again, in summary, just to emphasize, okay, in summary, we say we need to be able to be drinking at least 3 liters before a 60-minute event. Now, again, as I think about other things I want to add, we have if it's hot outside, if you're a player, the football or hockey, right? Hockey obviously not gonna be hot, it's gonna be cool, but you still have extra clothing. But football, for example, and it's hot and humid weather, the biggest concern is that we need to make sure that the hydration is being replenished, right? And so the first 60 minutes, so basically before the match, if it's hot, we need to be hydrating more, right? So it may not be just 3 liters. We're talking about, especially depending on your weight, how hot it is, how much we expect to lose. We're talking about a 4 or an additional 1 or 2 liters pre-event in order to properly hydrate, because you're going to lose more fluids, right? You're going to lose more salt in hot, humid weather. So we need to be really considerate and cognizant of the fact that if it's hot and humid weather and the environment is expected to be an environment that is going to increase your speed of heat loss, heat retention, if it's going to increase heat in the body, and we need to be able to lose heat at a regular rate, we would definitely want to make sure that we're recommending that you're drinking more fluid. Now, the segue into the next one is, how do you know you've drinking enough fluids? How do you know individually you've drinking enough fluids, right? And some people, you've probably heard it, that you obviously look at the color of your urine, right? The color of your urine needs to be clear, right? It can't be yellow. It can't have an orange yellow tint to it. If it's yellow, light yellow, dark yellow, light orange, yellowish orange, right? The amount of fluid that you've taken in is not enough, right? It's not enough. So you can check your urine color, obviously leading up to your competitive event, and know if you've had enough. And if it's not clear, then you know you haven't had enough, and you know you most likely should be replacing fluids in that first 60 minutes, right? In that first 60 minutes. So so that's a little segue into what we're going to do next, right? We're going to talk about urine color. We're going to talk about the different types of the different types of foods to eat, and the different and how to create your own electrolyte beverage. Okay, so that's coming next, and then this concludes my my seminar, my class discussion on the intro to hydration, and I hope to see you next time when we get into part 2 of hydration.